Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to part 3 of this exclusive sit-down with Alastair Gray and Denise Straiges from the Academy of Homeopathic Education in the US. So you will remember that part 1 of this conversation was actually back for episode 91. And last week, in episode 102, we had part 2 and we continued the conversation about educational standards and all things homeopathy. It was aptly named Swimming in the Ocean of Homeopathy. So do check that out. And we continue where we left off last week with part 3. And this episode 103. And hey, there will be a part 4 in the new year.
Can I put a word to it? Because I think that what the profession needs to have is accountability, both from the standpoint of the educator, the outcomes that students have, but also within the profession. We need to be accountable, because if you are doing some sort of crazy newfangled homeopathy and then you're not following through to make sure that that client is okay in the long term, then that's not accountability either.
Or that student is still practicing after 2, 5 or 10 years.
Right.
Where's the accountability?
That's actually, that's a very interesting point, because I know, sorry, go and finish before I,
No, because I won't stop.
It's interesting because I know that it's very sad to know that a lot of the students that do graduate, they actually don't go into practice.
Exactly.
And that's really sad. You know?
Well, when we had the opportunity to create our own program, so we were both contract academics, we worked for all these other schools, and this is exactly what we saw. You had these incredibly smart people that paid a lot of money, they put in a lot of time, right? And they graduate and they actually can't do the job. And so then they start to add things. I'm going to go to this seminar and learn this thing. I'm going to start selling supplements or whatever, right? I'm going to learn how to do energy work along with it, because they're not getting the results that they would get if they had actually learned homeopathy. And so when we had the opportunity to create our program, we sat down and we were like, okay, what is it? What makes a good program? What have we seen that really works? And what have we seen that hasn't worked? And it hasn't been necessarily the quality of the student, although I would say that years ago, there were people who were, third career, older women. The demographic of the homeopathy student was people who sort of had the time and the energy and the money to just sort of learn something that was interesting to them. They weren't planning to go into practice. But now that there's a higher demand for good practitioners, there are people who are coming who say, I want to do this as my job. And so we said, okay, we want to be the place where people are going to graduate and actually do the job. Yeah. And so the first thing that we identified was that there was not enough clinical experience. People were not actually in a clinical environment, watching cases, working through the issues, and then following those cases long-term. If you cannot do long-term case management, you cannot be a homeopath. The first prescription, after a certain point, should be relatively easy. And Al hates when I say it, but if you go to a school where you can't make the first prescription, you should get your money back and a pony.
I don't understand the pony part.
Because everybody wants a pony.
My Little Pony.
Any kind of pony. You should get a present.
I want a unicorn. A
unicorn. I'd love a unicorn, actually.
I've seen a unicorn.
No, it was a horse with a party hat.
No, that was a horse with a...
That actually did happen.
It was.
It was in Prospect Park in Brooklyn.
Alastair, wake up. This is not real. This is the Matrix.
He took the red pill.
Choose the red pill, which is lycopodium, or choose the blue pill, which is arnica.
Oh my God.
I love it.
So that was that part of really teaching people how to do the job, right? If you're teaching people how to follow a case long term, the only way they are going to have good outcomes is if they actually have the skills and attributes of a homeopath. It's like if you work backwards from the success in practice, you're going to get there.
It's been a challenge actually, because we've gone through this process. Like literally, I'll just kind of, because I think you kind of rushed over a couple of really important points. Denise taught in everywhere for a decade or more in the UK, North America. I've been doing the same thing in the Southern Hemisphere since 1998. And,
Wow.
like fly in, teach, do a good show, all of the teaching, and then leaving because I don't know, that learning stuff, I don't know this, if anything landed. And so when we got together, we had the opportunity to start from scratch.
Yep.
And we did. Now, in the meantime, I'd also been working in the higher education sector in Australia at Endeavour College of Natural Health, which is kind of a very different organization now to what it was then. But I mean, I remember being kind of humbled and then humiliated a number of times when I'm in a meeting with my colleagues in the other departments, the naturopathic department or the acupuncture department, and our compliance managers, and them saying, ask me a question. And I said, no, this is the way we do it in homeopathy. And they looked at me as if I had three heads and they said, no. And, and then followed it through with, for this reason, for this educational reason, bang, 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 bang.
Accountability.
I tell you what, here's a good example. The first lecture that I ever got at school was on sulfur.
Same. Misha
Misha taught a
teaching
kick-ass
sulfur.
lecture on sulfur. And I thought about it, and then, the next weekend came along and whatever. And I realized that, and then I realized that I had absolutely no way to understand what I was hearing. What I learned was that very often, from an educational perspective, very complex philosophical concepts and skills are taught at a foundational level that are advanced.
Yes.
And actually, from a compliance perspective, you want to have your foundational information, then your integrative information, and then your application.
Yeah.
That's an educational arc. And so often that was just not the case in any of the schools that I was teaching at when I'm doing my lecture on sulfur to the first year students. So we don't do that. We had an opportunity. It was a really cool opportunity to start again from scratch. But what we've found is that what we would be saying is that the broad, and I mean medical homeopathy and professional homeopathy and naturopathic homeopathy, the broad agreement about what are the knowledge, the skills, and the attributes, they're still not there.
No.
And so we've had to kind of go it alone to an extent, because we found that while we're trying to raise standards, we've got heavyweights around us trying to slow it down, and it's not always been pretty.
Yeah. So that for us, that was 2015. That was when, so we had come to it with all that experience. 2015, we had this opportunity to rebuild a program. And so we've run it, 27 times.
27. I think we need to work that out again.
I know. It's around.
Might be more.
So at least 27 times we've run our whole program. So this is like 1,000 FaceTime hours plus all the other, right? And so every year at the end of, when a cohort finishes, we look at it and we say, well, how did we do? What do we need to do better? And so we've been for the last, so it's been, 9.5 years that we've been working on this. And what we do now is so different than what was done. So what we inherited that we had to sort of turn around, it was like the students had all sorts of different bits of information. And so creating homeopathy curriculum and looking at it and really being serious about educational standards and accountability means that students are really good at it. So now going back to your question, like, why do people they graduate and they don't do the job? The people who are, there are people who always did, but not enough of them. Yeah. And so now I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of turning out people who are really good,
One of the examples I think, that's a bit different in the time that, say, we were at school, I don't know, when you went to school, homeopathy.
Mid-90s.
Yeah. And so Part of the decision-making process that we've, gone through is that we are of the opinion that you cannot be a homeopath in the 21st century without a significant amount of digital literacy,
Mm,
right?
mm, absolutely.
Information management skills, you know,
Yeah.
knowing how to turn a computer on and off no, we need more than that. It's in that space where we've put in curriculum time to give students the kind of confidence. And then, of course, there's the business skills that are critical because, what is the career trajectory? Well, it's absolutely, you are an entrepreneur in the healthcare space
Yeah.
and in competition with everybody else. And you got to have some skills. You got to have some management skills, but some entrepreneurial skills around that as well. So
Yeah.
those are two examples where I think our curriculum is kind of like it's, different.
I love what you're saying, and it's so important. It's just like saying you've done, certainly in the UK, we have something called a theory test before you before you can, alongside or before you can start taking lessons. And what's
Right. But because
hey, what happened?
Nothing to see here,
no,
officer.
it's about Alan, his driver's test in the United States, but it's a whole other.
I've been driving since I was 16 years old, right? Except
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
illegal. I've been illegal driving because I'm in the great state or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and they don't accept any license from any other country. And so
Right.
Well, no, you have to take a driving test if the country where you learn to drive
I was on
has
the
the
list.
steering wheel on the other side.
Oh my God. And how's that been going for you then?
I think
Well, I
it's
had to
fair.
do my driving test again.
And he put it
I,
off for
I was
9
I was
years.
illegal for 9 years. But anyway, I did it. Was it last summer?
I think
It was
so.
last summer.
It's pretty recent.
And oh my God, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But I totally get the learner test, the paper test, and then
But I said you
Yeah.
completed your PhD. Like
that was
people they got here 15 minutes ago, right? Who are taking this test.
I was terrified of the test. I
That's
really was.
that's the
studied
fear, isn't it?
so hard for the test.
I'm sorry. So as soon as you said it, that's why we
Oh my
started
God.
laughing because this is just
I can picture you and the instructor sitting there saying,
It hurts.
drive, and you're standing and he's saying drive, and he said, Mr. Gray, you okay? And you turn around saying, what?
oh my God. Well, it turns out the guy's mother's name was Denise.
He only let me pass because his mother, she's called Denise, and
Yeah.
she lives about 2 blocks
He
away.
lives by us. He grew up in our neighborhood. The
Oh.
other ones would not have passed because you have to drive around these cones,
Yeah.
and he was going the wrong way. And the guy's like, let's do that again. And I'm sitting there watching. I wish that I didn't see it because I can't
Brilliant.
unsee it now. Yeah, I
Brilliant.
was on the bench watching the whole thing. It was terrifying.
It's
But you did
also irrelevant.
because you're
What
a
were,
driver.
what were you saying? Thank you.
Anyway,
No, I can't get that out of my head now. You stand which side of the road am I?
oh my
But
gosh.
it's like that, isn't it, though, with when you're talking about education and what you've done and what you've achieved, because when we do the theory, it's like saying somebody says, okay, you've done the theory, see you later. Or you can actually take lessons with a qualified instructor who will mentor you as much as you need. It might be 2 lessons, it might be 7, it might be 50, right?
Yeah.
But eventually you pass. And clinical experience and this business acumen that we all need is so spot on with. It's not about turning a computer on. It's about being able to use a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Let's say people use digital repertories, software. Patient management records are generally not paper-based now. They're online, or whatever it is, an appointment system, a booking system, how to use Zoom,
Yeah.
and all of that. And the clinical experience is so, so important because you're empowering somebody to say, do you know what? I've spent the last 6 months or certainly, a year, and I've been I've had guidance on chronic cases, on acutes, and I think I'll be all right. Whereas sometimes you can just be left to your own devices. You've done the course and it's like, see you later.
That's
And
just,
what are you going to do? You
Right.
can't just get into the car and drive because you don't know where do you check, where's the fuel gauge, and
Yeah.
where's the handbrake, and what do you do?
I mean, part of the challenge with that, I totally agree with you. Part of the challenge has been that all of that falls right in the middle of the school and the professional association,
Yeah.
and they look at each other and go, we'll do this bit, but it's actually all your responsibility. And I think I've seen that in every country where I've been in and taught.
Because I think it's hard for the professional association if they don't know what the schools are doing,
Yeah.
right? So we built this mentorship
Standards.
model, right? The standards, right? So we built this mentorship model because of all the clinical training. Every client has a care team. So there's a case manager who's a senior student who's going to follow that case through. And so they are communicating with the client. They know, what do you need to find out at the 10-day mark, at the 3-month mark? What is the second prescription going to be? The third, and the students get to see those cases go through. But also, you've got your case manager. We have case coordinators. These are junior students who from the very beginning are following these cases. They're not responsible for the outcomes, but they're learning how do you email someone? What don't you say? How do you get approval for a nosode? What are all of those little idiosyncratic things that happen that can really, if you have to start from scratch on everything, we are maturing as a profession 230 years down the road.
Oh my Lord.
Because the demand is there. Well, I should say we are required to, if we are going to stay relevant, and if we are going to be able to really be a robust profession, then because the demand is there. But if the profession doesn't rise to the occasion, then the consumers are going to do it themselves, which is what we're seeing. So absent a really robust and healthy educational system and accrediting bodies and certifying bodies, then it's a free-for-all. People could just do whatever they want. And then it's going to turn out to be like what happened in America in the 19th century, right? I mean, it got so diluted without succussion where, they took the American Institute of Homeopathy is they are the Medical Homeopathy Association. They've been around since 1844, right? 1844. So they're at a time the AIH excluded the word homeopathy from its bylaws because you could just do it however you wanted, right? Because the evolution of homeopathy included clinical homeopathy. Right? In the UK. I mean, that was a really big deal. Was it Hughes who was the anti-Kent, right?
Richard Hughes.
Richard Hughes. So you've got the sort of spiritualists, high potency, Kentian, sort of psychospiritual providers. And then you've got the materialists, anything over 3C or 6C is too immaterial to be effective. So everything sort of became wonky. And in America, it got so diluted that there was no recognition of what homeopathy is. I don't want to see happen again what happened here 150, 60 years ago.
Yeah, it imploded and really from that 1879 conference.
Yeah, what was it called? That big international, there was this big Congress in the United States.
It was in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it was here in Philadelphia, 1877, I think.
Yeah, the World Fair or something. I don't know.
It was something like that. And there were 750 homeopaths, and there was this attempt to bring everybody together. And so it was a I can't think of a non-curse word for debacle. And that was the beginning of the end because there wasn't any sort of recognition of what homeopathy is. It became anything that used the pill. That was it, right? But the therapeutic intervention, Hahnemann's pharmaceutical preparation, is tied to a philosophy. So the only time that it's homeopathy is if it's used according to the core principles, right? Once you remove it, then it's just a substance in potency being used.
Homeopathy becomes homeopathy when it's used homeopathically.
Right, go figure.
I like that.
I like it.
It's good.
I like that.
Catchy.
Yeah. You could use that as a tongue twister, couldn't you?
You really could. Yeah, it's a catchy.
Put in the Pied Piper, and we're done and dusted.
Yeah.
One of the objectives of this show, when I started right at the beginning, was very much to, for want of a better word, make homeopathy hip to the next generation. Generation, right? Make it interesting, make it current, make it inspiring for them. And of course, with guests like yourself and everybody who's been on the show, that happens. And as a result of that, people are, having listened to episodes, taking interest in homeopathy. Just 2 weeks ago, somebody was listening to the podcast and we got talking, and she's enrolled in a course
Oh,
at a school. I won't mention the school just in case to embarrass, but at a school in the UK. And that was my dream. But the young generation are also extremely intelligent, and they're very switched on. I think you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
And they have these questions, right? These $1,000,000, or should I say $1,000,000 questions, why are there so many systems? Is this progress? Is it restriction? How am I really supposed to know what somebody's constitution is? What do you mean that this remedy is a polycrest and it links with another remedy? What follows well when sometimes in a different repertory it says, well, hang on, this remedy will antidote that remedy. So there's so many questions. There's so much we need to do as far as the world of homeopathy to put this into a system, because the youngsters can read news stories in 20 seconds or 15 seconds on social media, and they know the story, right? So they're going to come up with these questions.
Yep.
And there's a lot that needs to be done, isn't it?
Oh my
There
gosh.
really is. And a unified message on the basics would be a really good start. You're right.
Yeah.
I used to watch Ben, our youngest, write essays on his phone.
I couldn't believe it.
And,
I mean,
I'm
wow.
thinking, geez, that's a different brain. You're right. The quality of questions that we get
Oh
from
my
our
gosh.
students,
Amazing.
sometimes really intimidating. And actually the other part of it is our classroom is totally different to probably all of our classrooms when we were at homeopathy school, because we've got super mum homeschooling, don't you tell me what to do with my healthcare kind of
Yeah.
folk in our classroom. And then we've got PhDs and engineers
Yeah.
that are retooling their career path. And then we've also got the nurse practitioners and the medically qualified folks
Yeah.
that are turning up. So you're totally right about the quality and the smartness and the speed.
Yeah.
And we've got to hang in there. The only thing I can say is that we've got to start with a clear, unequivocal, and agreed upon message about what is this.
That's my research question, is what the hell is homeopathy?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
haven't talked about research. When are we going to do that?
Wait, yesterday I was working on something. We're putting together a course. Can I plug our telehealth service, right? So we've got Homeopathy Help Now. We are a charity, and it's a research and clinical initiative. So anyway, but one of the things that we're launching in September, October time is a palliative and end-of-life care initiative. So working with hospice and death doulas, right? So so I'm working on the curriculum for that, and I was looking for something in Kent's lectures, and I came across something that I didn't remember. I probably read it at some point, but it's lecture 37, and it just really fits. It's just a quick couple sentences with what we've been talking about. And Kent says, quote, "While homeopathy itself is a perfect science, its truth is only partially known. The truth itself relates to the divine. The knowledge relates to man. It will require a long time before physicians become genuine masters in this truth. When homeopathy is hundreds of years old and little ones grow up into the knowledge of it and observe and practice it, our successors will acquire knowledge that we do not possess now. Things will grow brighter as minds are brought together and men think harmoniously. The more we keep together, the better. The more we think as one, the better. It's a pity that differences should arise among us when we have so perfect a truth to bind us together."
That's so eloquently and beautifully said, by the way. And I think you're no better person to read it than you, actually, I have to say. But there's so much truth to that, isn't there?
Yeah.
There is. Going back to the basics. We mentioned this in episode 1, actually. We were talking about the basics and the foundation. And of course, you've spoken with great detail on that. Under educational standards, it's so important to know the birth, the concept. It's so important to know the man who came across homeopathy, the struggles he had in his life, the problems moving house and facing ridicule and being sworn at and laughed at and blah, blah, blah. It's part and parcel, isn't it?
It is.
Of who that person was and the struggle and the fact he was so compassionate that nothing took him off that path. That in itself is so important, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It can't be it, what's the word I was going to say? Underestimated. It's not that. It can't be undervalued. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like what you just said is just, it's like the core of it,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I always think of, with Kent with his lectures, and there's maybe no lighting and dusty classrooms, poor lighting and maybe a blackboard, and the tables were probably not what we see today, certainly,
Yeah.
in a dusty room lecturing. But my, what a marvel that must have been, because what a genius, right? Amongst all the other homeopathic geniuses, but what a powerful brain and mind, and years ahead, actually, I have to say, because we still haven't caught up, have we?
Really interesting. I mean, Kent, for me, we live in Philadelphia, and that's where that lecture was written,
Yeah.
or at least transcribed. When you think about it, all the books that have made it through the 1900s were written by, well, Kent in particular, the repertory, the Materia Medica, and the lectures. They're all transcriptions from the 10 years when he was running his postgraduate school here. One of the things about that is because I'm hot and cold with Kent.
Same.
To be honest with you,
Yeah.
because because Kent, when you read his philosophy, it's like that's it, and then you read his case books and they're different. Like he did not do, this sort of spiritualist kind of homeopathy with massively high potencies, linking simple substance at the blah 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 blah, all of that. He didn't do that when Mrs. G, who had gout, came to see him. He seemed to be doing kind of sensation location, where's the concomitant zero modality there?
Yeah.
He seemed to be doing really basic homeopathy in his day job, and then he was writing very highbrow and to an extent appropriately so, but misused Kentian homeopathy has taken us in directions that have not been useful. And I'm a fan of the Brits. I'm a fan of Hughes. I love James Compton Burnett.
Yeah.
And some of those perspectives that really just grounded. And the French. I had an amazing lunch once in Lyon at the Boiron factory, and I'm talking to the Boron factory. They feed all their workers great food every day. Anyway, so that's irrelevant. But I'm talking.
Interesting to know.
I'm talking to these French homeopaths, and they're saying we have no idea. We do not understand these spiritualist American homeopaths. And it was kind of one of the first times, one of those honest times that I realized, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And then I realized, oh, I was taught Kentian homeopathy.
Yeah.
Oh, Kentian homeopathy has dominated homeopathy for 140 years. Kind of, to an extent, I think probably around 2000, 1995, 2000, Gibson and Vermeulen and Julian Winston started to talk about Berningshausen again. And that revival came back, like going back to the roots. The biggest consequence of I would say misused Kentian homeopathy, or maybe Kentian homeopathy, is that it emphasized the pill, and it emphasized you got one shot, and it created a level of anxiety in the profession and amongst students at a time where they need to be developing confidence.
Yeah.
This perspective of homeopathy as having, it's a thing, right? So homeopathy, it is what Hahnemann, developed based on universal laws. And then from the Hahnemannian principles were all these spokes coming out of the central hub. And then at some point, the post-Kentian point, somebody drew another circle around it and sort of included all of the things that came off of what the central hub was. And that is problematic in a lot of ways, because the power of the homeopathic medicine and its affinity to the laws of the universe it lends itself to the conversations Kent was having, but he was having the conversation from a different perspective. He was using his Swedenborgian, sort of science and God together combined in a way that is very different than Hahnemann, an 18th century chemist, was looking at. Hahnemann was an alchemist, and alchemy in its true origin story is very different than the alchemical conversations that happened in that sort of post-Enlightenment period that was, the sort of, if you go to sort of the occult times in England in the early 1900s, right? You get that is a very, very different conversation.
Mm.
And so I think that we got kind of swept up in that, and that just bled into the understanding of homeopathy, which then becomes a free-for-all.
There's a great deal, isn't it, that we need to be doing now, because going back again to this new generation, the switched on generation,
Yeah.
they can ask real questions which need answering, and we need answers. Or should I say, if we have the answers, we should be very comfortable to be able to answer them in modern day language, rather than go back, because they may not necessarily understand that language from 200 years ago. It needs to be current, it needs to be timely, it needs to be rephrased so that it stands the test of time. Because homeopathy is progressive, it's going to continue to develop, and who knows where it's going to take us, right? And, you read that wonderful paragraph, and who knows what the future is going to hold. But
Yeah.
we can never forget where it all came from, because it still comes from that same engine, doesn't it?
Sure
You can
does.
change the wheels, or you can make them larger or more shinier or whatever, you change the paintwork, but it's saying how the engine has to remain the same. Otherwise, you've lost it. There's nothing left.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Hahnemann understood, complex autoimmunity can be seen through the lens of chronic diseases, right? It's SORA. Yeah. I mean, not to get in the weeds, because there are people listening who aren't, sort of deep into that conversation, but when people say, well, the diseases of today are different, it's amazing to go back and look at them. Hahnemann actually answered those questions, right? So you're right. When we can reframe things, like teaching philosophy to students, I always say you've got to be able to teach the philosophical concept in 15 seconds or less, 2 minutes on a complicated one, and that's it. Everything else is confusing. But when people can, look at a philosophical concept and then say it back in their own words, so I'm a total nerd when it comes to like note taking and personal knowledge management, this PKM business. Being a researcher,
Sounds
it's like,
flashy.
oh, I love it. And there's this old German system called Zettelkasten. And basically it means a note in a box, right? And it's this really simple concept of how we learn. And the way that we learn is to integrate something and say it back in our own words. And so I work with the students on note taking in doing this very thing that you're talking about, because we've got to take these old things and turn them into 21st century concepts. So you go over something and then you write it down in your own words. You might quote something, but you need to be able to explain it and articulate it in space of the problem you're trying to solve. And this idea of the Zettelkasten, the guy who started it, he wrote like a bazillion books because he had already synthesized the information and understood how to apply it. Yeah. And so I think that idea is, sorry, I could totally nerd out on personal knowledge management. I find it to be so that's how I found that quote from Kent so fast. I was looking at me like, what are you doing? I went to my Obsidian vaults and, and I have it archived under Truth and Kent and the Next Generation. It was like, boom, there it is. Yeah, sorry, total nerd out moment.
Yeah, you're obviously an exceptionally talented teacher, I have to say. It's wonderful. I love listening to you. That's why I'm so quiet. I'm just enjoying it.
Actually,
I'm enjoying the show.
I'm going to spread the love, because there's not too many doors in our house. And so I get to listen to Denise teaching. She talks fast. And so I often wonder what it's like, what are the notes at the other end? But in terms of teaching homeopathy, no one better.
Oh, come on, you guys.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now tell me, you've spoken about this, the new curriculum that you're working on.
Yeah.
For palliative care and all the other information that you've spoken about and what you're doing. Where can people go? Please give me some links.
Yeah.
Let them know. Let them know where do they go?
Yeah, 3 places to go. If you're interested in education, the Academy of Homeopathy Education, it's ahe.online. Our foundation, and this is where all of our information about our research, there are videos there. You can get links to all of our publications. That is homefoundation.org. That's HOHM homefoundation.org. And then our telehealth service is Homeopathy Help Now, and that's homeopathyhelpnow.com. And I encourage people to sort of get a sense of what's going on. If you want a place to start, if you're looking for help within homeopathy, Homeopathy Help Now is just an amazing service. We've seen over 5,000 acute cases since we started in March of 2020. And so our team has the capacity to see between 1,200 and 1,500 cases a year. And we are bringing more people in. We're expanding. All of the things we develop are given freely. It's really important for us. And we've created this infrastructure where people can get high quality, low cost care that is contributing to the body of evidence in homeopathy. So that's for everybody. If you're a practitioner and you want to be a part of our research, we've developed a practitioner generated research network, a PGRN. There are videos about it on the Home Foundation website. And we could talk about this the next time, but basically we've created a very easy paradigm for everyone who's a practitioner to participate in. We've created a universal health inventory form. So it's basically a client survey that goes out to any client you're going to see. Anywhere in the world, any practitioner can participate. We'll give you this form. Your client fills it out. You get the information with all of their data, and we get a de-identified version that we can use for research. And then we're collecting outcomes measures, right? So how well did your client do? This initiative in our practitioner generated research network is hugely important, because if we want to build that bridge and create unity in the profession, we can't worry about right now how people are practicing homeopathy. If you're a practitioner and you follow, you've talked about Jan Schulten's methodology, or Sankaran and the sensation method, whatever, or you're a strictly Hahnemannian person, great. We want to know who's coming to your practice and how do they do when they leave.
Yeah.
And that way we can create this bomb-proof body of evidence that says there are tens of thousands of people who are getting better with homeopathy. We can then take that data and we can create peer-reviewed publications with that information. We can create a dollars and cents review that goes to a public health official that says it costs X number of dollars for you people to treat a kid with Crohn's who's diagnosed at age 5, who's going to be on 6-MP and these other, drugs that are going to cost, tens of thousands of dollars a year. Or they can see the homeopath and for hundreds of dollars have a better level of health and be free of those medications for the rest of their lives, or at least So we've got these programs already set up for practitioners. Just jump right on in, work with us. We're not going to judge how you practice. We don't need to know how you practice. We want to know who's coming and how they do when they leave. And it's totally anonymized so that we're just collecting data. So that you can find all that information on the Home Foundation website.
homefoundation.org
Yep.
/research.
And that is definitely something we're going to talk about. This is part 2 and 3 we've done. So we're going to end up doing a part 4 later this year. But, I just wanted to share something with you that I've had the good fortune and honor to speak to you now for 3 episodes. And it's something really beautiful that both of you sort of exude, which is the fact that knowledge is power, but you are absolutely so willing to share everything. Share, give. And you know what? That's only going to lead to success, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, to be very frank, it's not about you. I know how you're thinking now. It's not about yourselves. It's about what can we do to help others? And that's actually the crux of homeopathy, right? Help. And, kudos and absolutely fantastic. I think, you two are a match made in heaven, both in life and homeopathically as well. You're a homeopathic combination. Hey, go and deal with that one.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, that's really lovely.
Thank you so much. I don't even, for once, I have nothing to say.
Yeah, no, it's a mic drop. Mic drop.
It's wonderful what you're doing. Honestly, it's really inspiring, and I think those listening to this show, of course, please do get in touch, and also look forward to part 4, which we're actually going to talk about this research program and in a great more detail, including research on homeopathy itself and the remedies, of which I believe the latest figure I heard certainly was there are over 7,000 remedies now. But hey, lots to talk about. But Denise Straiges, Alastair Gray, absolutely an honor. This is going to be an epic 3-parter, and thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
so appreciate getting to be here and that you're spreading the word about homeopathy. We love it. Thank you, Atik.
Can't wait till next time.
Yeah.
See you then.
Thank you. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far. And of course, you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.